Senator Schultz and I introduced our bill as a responsible alternative because it did what the company asked for. And it did what the company, there's a chair over there, come on in. Did what the company asked for. It protected the public voice, but we did it within a set of timelines that the company was looking for. A defined process. It's just like they do it in Minnesota. In Minnesota, they permit mines between 2 and 4 years. That's what it will take eventually with this, regardless of how many days we think it's going to take. So ours was common sense, it was real, and it was based upon actual practice in the state. When the bill was brought up on the state Senate, so that you understand, the myth is I voted to kill the mining bill, and that the Democrats killed jobs and killed the mining bill. The bill was AB 426, and the process is this. The bill comes before the Senate. The first item is to amend the bill. That's how you deal with bills. So there is a proposal there. It's the finance version. So it's the Assembly bill version. That was rejected on a 17-16 vote. The bill isn't dead yet because the next item was the Jauch-Schultz bipartisan amendment. Had we taken that amendment up, it would have been adopted 17-16. And the Senate would have taken a position, 17-16, for a different way to approach the mining regulatory process than the Assembly bill. What happened? After the 17-16 rejection, the Republican floor leader pulled the bill. And he moved the bill back to committee. So what was the reason? The reason was that he wanted to blame the Democrats for being against jobs, and he wanted to say Republicans are for jobs. And that's, let me finish the whole scenario. And so he scheduled a bill that he knew couldn't pass, but wouldn't schedule a proposal he knew couldn't pass, but wouldn't schedule a proposal that would pass because he didn't like the bill. That's not the way democracy works. There was a majority. Now, I will tell you that it's the first time in 40 years that I've been involved in Wisconsin politics I've ever seen a majority leader schedule a bill that would lose. But his purpose in scheduling the bill was so that he could declare political victory and blame Democrats for being against jobs, rather than looking for a resolution on the issue. So the bill went back to committee. Rather than making a scene, we agreed to vote to send the bill back to committee 33-0, in the hopes that we could work to salvage something in a more responsible way. I'm going to be meeting with the governor next week. Senator Schultz met with the governor this week. I've met with the Mining Association chair twice, including yesterday with two of my colleagues, Senator Schultz and Senator Cullen, and we're still trying to find a way to come up with a proposal that addresses what a company asked for, so that we can get this job done, whether it's for Gogebic or someone else. The governor said 2 weeks ago that he said that they couldn't accept our proposal because Gogebic was not willing to compromise any further. Now let's think about that. Do we really want the governor of the state of Wisconsin taking a position that he's taking orders from a company, any company, which becomes an absolute ultimatum on what they can accept or are willing to accept? We're doing what they asked for. Do we need to put them in control of every detail of what they're asking for? Our job is to pass a bill that endures a legacy of time, that can apply anywhere in the state, that's fair to a company, that does what the company asked for, that's responsible and real. That's where we stand at this time. I don't believe adjournment should be an excuse for quitting. I think that we still have an obligation to try to get the job done. Now, having said that, I wanted you to hear the story of what has happened. We'll be glad to take comments or concerns from the audience. We'll start here, and if you could just identify yourself.
Oh, my name is Tom Teske, and I guess in my reading of the newspaper articles about this, there was a third bill that was developed in the Senate by, was it Senator, and a committee by Senator Kedzie?
Actually, Senator Kedzie, if I can respond to that. Now, what Senator In September, Senator Fitzgerald, after 3 months of my effort, finally created the Senate Select Committee on Mining. I was appointed to it. Senator Kedzie is a real consensus builder. And in February, he did introduce a bill, but he proposed a draft that was a combination of the Assembly bill and a couple of other changes. One on taconite taxation, which we haven't gotten into. The other was contested case. He got so much criticism from this that his wife literally had to leave the house. There was so much harassment. Several days later, Senator Fitzgerald disbanded the committee, dissolved the committee he created because he didn't like the direction the chair was taking. Now, talk about a dysfunctional legislature. In other words, there was only one bill, only one way, and that wasn't the right and responsible way. So what Senator Kedzie was attempting to do was say, let's look at Minnesota, but let's try to find a consensus. And Senator Schultz and I worked with him. It was after Senator Kedzie's committee was dissolved that Senator Schultz and I figured we have a responsibility to propose an alternative, which is what we did. Yes, Sandy?
My name is Sandy Lyon, and this is my hometown. This is my church. There's my classmate. There's my neighbor. There's my senator. And I want to thank you so much for doing what you have done, because I did watch you on Wisconsin Eye. Anybody can, wisconsini.org or .com, or I think it is, and can watch what's going on down there. And thank you, Nick, for everything that you did last year, too. Water isn't polluted just for Republicans or just for Democrats. Water is what binds us here in northern Wisconsin. My hero, Gaylord Nelson, said that the economy is a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. Meaning that if we don't have a good environment, we don't have an economy here, you know? And I heat my house with wood. I use water. I put this in a bottle, but it's right out of my well. And I for sure want to see that goes. I was also a person back in, it was in 1981 where I first heard about mining coming to my hometown. My dad was Skip Shireman. He was a gym teacher here. Maybe some of you guys had him. And at that time, my dad said, "We can't fight City Hall." But I don't like injustice. I won't stand for it. And that's where I first started finding out about the minerals of Wisconsin. And here's what I found out in some of that time, is that we have a thing, you call it fool's gold, but it's iron, it's pyrite. And what that does, it's in the rocks. It's not in all the rocks, but it's in the rocks. And if it's in the rocks, and if it's mined, and you bring it out, and you mix it with air and water the way it happens in the mining process, it can create sulfuric acid, which is like battery acid, in your water. That gets started. It lasts over 100,000 years, and it can't quit. It can't be stopped. Now, one point I want to point out to you, Bob, and to people who've been reading the unfortunate information in the newspapers, because it isn't clear. It isn't clear when they're talking about the ridiculous thing about the magnets. You know, the new technology they have. They're not talking about the mining process. They're talking about the beneficiation process. And so what they're doing is they're obfuscating. They're confusing the general public as to what this is. This, I think it was said very well by a former Spooner pharmacist whose name's Laura Gauger. And she actually wrote a 1,800-page book about mining in Wisconsin. Followed it like a pharmacist would, point by point by point by point. And she pointed out something. The Ladysmith mine was, a certain size, certain shape, everything like that. The proposed mine in the Pinocchio's would be 800 or 380 times the size of that one. She said if the Ladysmith mine was like a pea, the one in the Pinocchio's would be like a watermelon. The other thing about the difference in the Pinokies is it's uphill. It's uphill and downstream, directly downstream as water goes, to not only Lake Superior, but the Bad River sovereign nation. They have control over their water. And there were 2 geologists that spoke at the public hearing that was held in Madison, and I saw it on Wisconsin Eye. And they said that there are sulfides in that overburden. They call it the overburden. That's the, in Ladysmith, there was, the overburden was, 60 feet deep. And in that, it was filled with gold. And so the company at that time scooped that off, took that, and Spencer Black, and we never did find out how much money they actually made off of that. They took it away. The problem with the mining situation up in the Pinokies is that in the process of creating the tailings, it would move it into like a talcum powder situation. Bob's been up there. He's seen how wet and soggy and wetland filled and beautiful and wonderful and lush. And if you've been to Copper Falls, you've seen the area. That's the kind of area where they would be taking these talcum powder picked and mixing it and putting it in right on top of that water because they just passed that wetland law. Now, this upset me because I don't like injustice and I don't like untruth. And so I called my representative just before AB 426 was about to hit the floor. And unfortunately, I'm in Stone Lake Township in Washburn County, and I'm with Roger Rivard. And so, Nick, if there's anything you can do when you change those boundaries, please, 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 please look after Stone Lake Township and get us out of Roger Rivard, because I spoke to him. Now, I didn't come here.
You want to stick to mining.
I didn't say that I am sticking to mining. I didn't come here to make this talk, Bob. I just wanted to say that. But I was the person whose hunch it was that became the mining moratorium law. And that was because I had this hunch that, when you drive up in Minnesota and you look at those big piles, was iron mining. That's not the ones with not with sulfide in it. They have like poplar trees and jack pines sticking out of it, But if you got like copper treated wood, mold won't grow on it, or anything won't grow on it like that. And so I called my friend Evelyn Churchill in Ladysmith, and I said, Evelyn, when you were around the country, did you see any copper mines that had the tailings, that had stuff growing out? She goes, no. And so I had this hunch. And so I wrote a letter to the Ladysmith paper, and I said, I made this real bold statement that they can't reclaim, put back the way it was, water's not polluted, air's not polluted, a sulfide mine. And that company, Kennecott, wrote back and they put in a half-page ad. Now Frank could probably tell you about how much that would be worth. A half-page ad, and they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they listed to 26 different mines where they had recovered, where they had reclaimed it.
Okay.
I took a look at that real close because I don't like
So your concern is the pyrite, the sulfide issue.
that was, every single one of those was a coal mine.
Yeah.
So I wrote back and I said metallic sulfide.
Right.
And we asked Exxon and we asked Kennecott, and none of them have ever yet been able to show us an example of a metallic sulfide mine that's been reclaimed and the water hasn't been polluted. And thus, that's how we came up with the mining moratorium law. But, so I told Roger, I said, my concern is that talcum powder stuff getting into the water. And he told me that they'd put a liner in it. I said, no, Roger, they don't do that. He goes, well, they did in Ladysmith. I said, no, Roger, they didn't do that.
The issue is this. In AB 426 and in Senator Schultz and my bipartisan bill, we defined what ferrous mining. In our proposal, it defines ferrous mining as mining activity in which there are no significant amounts of sulfide. Significant is a term used often in our statutes. It's like when you see it, you know it. It looks like a duck, and then you're going to know what it is. So significant really means in large quantity, a dangerous quantity. The assembly proposal says that in ferrous mine is a product when there is a blend between sulfide and iron ore. Now that means there's no definition of what the blend is. A blend could be 20% sulfide, 80% non-sulfide, which would raise real concerns about acid drainage. So we felt as though our definition was more precise to protecting the region from actually a sulfide mine operation. But we can argue the definitions. The fact is, we were both trying to accomplish the same thing. There is a concern up in that mine that deserves a lot of study, and that is the overburden. Because with normal snowfall, not this year's snowfall, normal snowfall, the impact to the Bad River or the Tyler Forks River is not going to be from the actual extraction of the ore. It's going to be from the runoff from the overburden. That all flows into Copper Falls. You've been to many or most of you have been to Copper Falls. When you stand at the falls, Brownstone Falls, and you see the Bad River flow north, comes from the west, and then it flows north, and Tyler Forks is the Brownstone Falls. That 80% of that water all comes from runoff up in the Pinocchio Hills. So there is legitimate concern, and you want to make sure that you don't include definitions that may deprive the Department of Natural Resources from using the right tools or making the right decisions.
I
And we
support
thought,
your bill,
and
by the
we
way.
thought we might be doing that.